All right, good afternoon, everyone. How's it going? It's a small group. I see everyone's on their phone. I know it's just after lunch. Blood sugar is low. I get it. Um, but I'm glad you all are here to hang out and learn about opening the black box and why AI supply chain security can't wait. This is an issue that is striking every single organization represented here, leaders across the country and the world, and excited to dive into it. So a little bit about myself in brief. My name is Daniel Bardenstein. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Manifest. We focus on all things software supply chain and AI supply chain security. A little bit about myself, about my background in brief. Spent some time in government where I led technology strategy at CISA. I was also one of the cybersecurity leads for Operation Warp Speed, which was the US government's initiative to rapidly develop, distribute, and administer COVID-19 vaccines, and some other fun stuff around policy and building tech. So from a purely software perspective, we all know the painful problem of software supply chain security. Procurement, security, and compliance teams still don't have visibility into the risk of the technology that we build and buy, whether it's an MRI machine, a plane, point of sale system, or even an application that we're building across the enterprise or buying from a vendor. So one can only imagine if most organizations don't even have the software side of this figured out, how are we going to figure this out for the rush of AI? And so the core problem that I think we're all familiar with is that AI adoption is already outpacing our ability to secure it. Most people here probably have CEOs who are highly encouraging everybody to use AI in everything, and CISOs who are on the receiving end of that without the tools, automation, or processes to be able to securely make sure that AI is adopted, used, and inventoried, and make sure it fits all of the normal checkboxes we have for traditional security. So let's talk about some of the specific risks that security teams are worried about for AI, because again, this is not hypothetical. We're not trying to manufacture these supply chain threats for AI. These are real, these are tangible, these are already starting to happen. So the first is that AI, specifically models, and to some extent data sets as well, can have vulnerabilities or other types of risk. Some of these are traditional software vulnerabilities, like your pickle serialization or deserialization attacks, where adversaries can literally exploit or hack into models to have various types of impact. But there are also now non-traditional, call them vulnerabilities or risks. For example, one of the world's largest openly available data sets having thousands of images of child pornography that was used to train one of the most widely used open weight models, right? This is not a traditional security vulnerability as we think about it, but this means a lot of risk for organizations and security teams around the world. Next is the problem of shadow AI. I know it sounds like a buzzword, but we all remember when cloud became a thing, there was a concern about shadow IT. Users, engineers, IT folks around the enterprise could spin up new technology outside of the purview of compliance and security. That's exactly what's already happening in AI. We have engineers and data scientists who are pulling models and data sets from the likes of Hugging Face, GitHub, elsewhere, running models locally on their machines, all outside of the visibility of compliance teams and the security teams who need to understand what are we using, is it approved, what's actually getting put in our software. Slightly differently, AI poses novel risks to legal compliance and business, and especially in a way that can impact your company's bottom line. So a lot of people in the audience might be familiar with traditional software licenses, for example. It's usually a simple binary of Apache 2 and MIT. Permissive licenses are good for open source software. Strong copyleft, LGPL3, etc. are bad. We can't use them in our software. AI licenses are completely different. They are use case specific, so whether or not your organization can use a model or a data set depends on how you're using it. Your business might be facing risk by using models trained on data sets that weren't licensed properly, weren't obtained legally, or in high trust ways. There might even be hidden risks in the lineage of a model. So if your organization, for example, has a no DeepSeek policy or bans models of some sort, it's very easy for someone, and we've seen this happen in Fortune 500 companies. I really want to use this model. My compliance team says I can't use it. I'm going to download it. I'm going to retrain it on some new data, and I'm going to give it a new name and say, hey, I want to use this model. So how do the compliance teams know that this violation is now being that this compliance need is now being violated. And the same is true with MCPs. So any AI buzzword you can think of, this is now adding risk to compliance and legal teams. And if used improperly or put into production level applications or products, and then you have to go rip it out, this actually poses risk to the bottom line. So if sharing all the various risks isn't enough to convince people in the audience or abroad or around to jump on board to make sure that we're investing in AI supply chain security, regulations and other types of requirements are already here and on the way. For those in the US, between the White House and the US Congress, there's already been White House memos, legislation put forward that requires transparency, inventory, provenance for AI, as the current administration is pushing for a rapid adoption of AI across the entire federal government. In Europe, we have the EU AI Act, which is an even stronger requirement around, again, the security and inventory and transparency of AI supply chains, provenance, risk, vulnerabilities, etc. Even the likes of guidance organizations like NIST, like OWASP, are pointing towards the need to implement various types of controls for AI. And for those selling or working with the US Department of Defense, there's an upcoming requirement that if you want to be able to get accredited quickly to sell to one of the world's largest buying centers, you have to be able to understand where your AI came from, how it was trained, what's in it, and whether it can be trusted. So all of this in a nutshell is why we at Manifest built the core platform that we've been deploying around the world in sensitive government agencies, critical infrastructure, and Fortune 500 over the last 3.5 years. And this past week, we just announced a new AI risk module that complements our platform that we've already been deploying on the product security and software risk side. We're really excited about this launch. There'll be a QR code at the very end of the talk if you're interested in actually giving it a spin for free. But we're hoping to get ahead of these pain points that we're identifying that, again, various teams in the enterprise, from procurement to security to compliance, are all going to face because they don't have the tools and workflows they need to get ahead of the AI security problem. So let's dive into some of the key capabilities and also some of the core problems that we're trying to address with this new module. One of the core problems here is a lack of structured data that allows enterprise teams to take action. We all know from our jobs that we can't search, filter, alert, export all of our favorite big data verbs. We can't do if our data isn't structured. There's a lot of data about there on AI. For example, I imagine a lot of people here are familiar with Hugging Face, what GitHub is for open source software, Hugging Face is for open weight models and data sets. You're also probably familiar with the concept of a model card or a data card, right? These unstructured representations and descriptions of what a model is, how it works, how to use it, where it came from. But there's a joke. If you've seen one model card, you've seen one model card. It doesn't help you. There's no consistent standard. Meta's model card will look different from Cisco's, will look different from Google's, will look different from others on Hugging Face. And the reality is, for people who are trying to understand AI risk, this is a highly manual process. That means reading a lot of internet web pages just to understand what it is that I'm looking at and trying to operationalize. So what we've gone ahead and done is taken whole swaths of unstructured data around AI from the likes of Hugging Face, GitHub, and other places, and integrate them together to create structured data that can then enable various types of AI security workflows. For example, we can go from that screenshot on the left that shows what a model looks like in Hugging Face to something on the right, where we are generating a robust AI bill of materials that gets information from Hugging Face, from other sources on the internet, enriching it significantly with other things that aren't easy to find, presenting it in an easy and structured way for users to understand where this model came from, what risk does it pose to my organization, and how do I go and take the next action, whether it's to approve the model, to share this, to take additional remedial action before we decide to go ahead and adopt. One thing I just mentioned, a core part of this is being able to have customizable AI governance policies. Not every organization will have the same policies and concerns for AI. DeepSeek is a good example. When DeepSeek was first announced, especially in the US, there was a very loud chorus of folks out there who said, my organization will never be able to use DeepSeek, especially for those in the US government or those selling or working with the US government and many other critical infrastructure. organizations, there are concerns around country of origin, vulnerabilities, whether there's software that gets actually shipped within these models, how old or new the model is, who is the organization or the individual who created and pushed this model or data set, and how is it licensed. Organizations need a way to customize, these are the policies that we care about, and these are the policies that we want to scan and score our models and data sets on before we decide to go forward and use them internally in our enterprise. And all of this is just the first step of how we enable organizations to handle the end-to-end AI supply chain. So we just talked about kind of the very top left of this flow. Your organization wants to bring in some open weight pre-trained models. How do we help them do that in 2 clicks rather than 6 weeks? But we also have other ways to get models and data sets into this system. We have a Python notebook plugin that sits right in front of your data scientists and engineers that as they are customizing and fine-tuning models, which represent new pieces of software, new pieces of AI, we're able to track these experiments, these new models, and these customized models, put them into a centralized pipeline. These models and data sets are enriched. There are bills of materials, these highly structured, consistent objects generated and stored. We're able to scan them against your organization's customized policies. We allow approvals and inventory. So when you have somebody in a business unit somewhere saying, hey, I want to use this model, or I've just tuned this model, can we use it? Can we use it broadly and deploy it in our production software? There's an easy and automated way to go through the right approval board or group and then into an enterprise-wide inventory that then continues to get updated as fine-tuning and customization happens. Then AI does not live in a vacuum. In order to leverage the value of these models, they have to get put into software somewhere. So it's not enough to just have an AI security and AI supply chain tool. You need to understand where was this version of this model deployed, into what container, into what repository, and then downstream, into what application, what car, vehicle, point of sale system, weapon system, whatever it might be. And then from there, it's easy to generate compliance reports, to share with regulators, to do continuous monitoring. Most AI security tools here at Black Hat, they might take a model and they'll scan it for you right then and there, and that's it. How do you get notified if after that model is in production, 6 months later, something bad happens? There's a new vulnerability, there's model drift, there's some other risk. How are you automatically notified, and how do you know what to take action on? So let's dive now a little bit deeper into some of the capabilities of this new model. The first I alluded to, and this will be part of the free trial that we're giving away at the end of the presentation. Within 2 clicks, you can get to basically a highly enriched bill of materials and model card that is risk-centric for open weight models. You can search or copy and paste the name of a model on Hugging Face, and within a matter of seconds, get rich information about licenses, parent model, supplier, files, extracted data sets, and more. We've designed this feature specifically with Fortune 500 companies over the last year. And before we delivered them this capability, it was taking some of the world's largest and most advanced companies literally 6 to 8 weeks to get from here is the model somewhere on the internet to yes or no, can we use this internally? Now we've got it down to 2 clicks. Next are model approvals and inventory. Again, we want to think through what are the next steps of all this process? How do we make the lives easier of the security and compliance folks across your organization? So, especially for large enterprises, you're going to have a lot of engineers or data scientists trying to find the best model out there for their specific purpose. How is there an easy and automated way by which they can request to approve those models that go to a central queue? Users can log in with an approval role with our robust rule-based access control system, see who is requesting a model from which business unit, from which use case, and what risk does it have, and then be able to adjudicate with that risk information whether or not we should bring this into our enterprise or whether we will not allow it. And then being able to put those approved models into a centralized enterprise-wide inventory. Not only is it helpful, as we know, to have an inventory because you can't secure what you don't know about, that drives other types of policy enforcement, shift left, and remediative actions because you know that if somebody's trying to bring in AI into source code or into a Python notebook, whether or not it's approved. So let's dive into those examples. Manifest already has robust source code scanning and SBOM generation capabilities. Now it can extract model and dataset loads from source code. So imagine here your application security teams, your developers who are pushing code, they're opening pull requests, they have new features that are going into the next release of the product you're building, but they may be putting in some models and data sets in there. Maybe you're aware of it, maybe you're not. How does AppSec know what models are being put into the new code? Are they approved? Are they risky or not? And can they block them, take remediative action before they get into production? And relatedly, policy enforcement. So we've talked about both the customizable policy enforcement on the way in during scanning for open weight models. This also applies to that Python plugin capability where your teams that are customizing and fine-tuning models are being notified as they are trying to design and tune their custom models, whether they're using models that are approved or unapproved, and what the risk, business risk, security risk is for those models. Because as we all know, it's much more expensive to make these fixes later on in the design and development process than very early on when data scientists, engineers are picking their base and foundation models to figure out what it is they want to build and what's the best model for my use case. A couple of real-life case studies over the last 6 to 9 months from what we've been able to accomplish. One of them I already alluded to, one of the world's largest IT companies. Like I said, they were the ones who took 6 to 8 weeks just to get to a yes or no decision on can we use this open weight model. We've got it down to 2 clicks, less than a minute, to a nice generated Word document that they can add and edit and then share with their other compliance team members, store in their compliance databases to say, yes, we approve this model for usage across the enterprise. We've worked with a large digital healthcare company that was trying to figure out which model should we use for our specific healthcare use case. They went to Hugging Face, they looked for show me the best performing models for healthcare that are pre-trained on various types of healthcare data. They wanted to use the one at the very top that was the best performing. We help them identify various disqualifying supply chain risks between an unknown and very questionable supplier of the model, the fact that during the evaluation, the model was pulled off of open source, or Hugging Face specifically, and a lack of transparency and a disqualifying license, all before they could decide, hey, we want to use this model because it looks the best. It saved them a huge amount of, again, compliance and business risk before they went ahead and deployed the model and built a new capability around this model. And lastly, we have started to pioneer this concept of AI continuous monitoring. Like I alluded to, most AI security tools are still point-in-time analyses of whether a model has some vulnerabilities or not, or whether someone is trying to reach out to api.deepseek.com or not. With a large government supplier in the defense industrial base, we're able to help them identify novel risk for models that they were already using in their environment that were deployed into source code, that they're about to deploy into large production contracts, so they could take remediative action before it got delivered to the end customer. So like I mentioned, we are incredibly excited about launching this new capability. It complements well our existing platform. The last thing enterprise security teams need is 2 separate tools, one for software security, one for AI security. We're trying to build and bring to market a holistic supply chain platform that covers both software risk and AI risk, because that's what organizations need and will help them do their jobs easier and faster. So since you are here in the audience, you are invited to be an early adopter of this capability. If you scan the QR code, you'll be able to get access to this new capability for free and give us some early feedback and deploy it in your organization. We'll be happy to help you get ahead of your AI software supply chain security demands. So with that, I have a little bit more time remaining. I'd be happy to take any questions that people have. Otherwise, I'll hang out around the stage afterwards for any further questions. Thank you very much.